The Black Healing Joy and Justice team envisions a rich exploration of liberation within an individual, between individuals, in communities, and throughout societies globally.
This work is meant to inspire and facilitate radical healing and empowerment of Black minds, bodies, and souls. Our team embodies unabated Black joy and the freedom to define Blackness for ourselves, outside and separate from white settler supremacy and anti-Blackness.
Through the intersection of art and community-engaged research, we intend to inform an understanding of how to support Black life at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and beyond.
Hello, and I am Dr. Coles here, and we are here on behalf of the Black Healing Joy and Justice team at the UMass Amherst College of Education, Center of Racial Justice and Youth Engaged Research, and we are here to talk about our latest article from the center and from the team, Black Artistic Imaginaries and the Endemicity of Anti-Blackness in the U.S. University. And so the entire point of our article was to really think about how do we use Black art as a sort of corrective or sort of counterweight to sort of the larger climate and context of anti-Blackness that really sort of is present in society, and particularly within society's institutions, like our institutions of higher education.
Yeah, as a graduate student here at UMass Amherst, the climate, especially during the pandemic, has been really tense, and it's really exacerbated a lot of feelings that were already here, but made them more prominent, and so they were just being felt more heavily by students. And so especially when a letter came out in early, I believe it was August, I think it was August 2020, which is
21, yeah.
August 2021. Okay, so so a letter came out, an anonymous letter that was sent to Black students, Black organizations, so it felt very targeted, and the sentiments in those letters were really strong and really hurtful. And at the time, the university didn't really have structures to support the students and really, understand and center and allow us to have a space to kind of center ourselves. And so in response to that letter, we as like the Black Healing Joy and Justice Collective, we thought we needed to do something that was for Black students, about Black students, and outside of, I think, the gaze of administrators, faculty, people who just white settler supremacy and anti-Black views. And so, yes, we put together this event in October.
And so we felt like this was the perfect opportunity to bring people together through art. We felt as though it was important at this time to center joy, because when the letter came out, of course, like the anti-Black sentiments, it upset tons of students on campus. I specifically remember attending an event hosted by the BSU. It was like a hearing forum, and all of these Black students raised their hands, got up, talked about so many different racial incidents on campus that have hurt them over time. And students were in tears. There were alumni that zoomed in and talked about how things have happened like that to them when they were there. And so in this particular event, which happened on October 5th, we decided that it was important for us to utilize art as a vehicle to center healing and to center joy and to discuss justice in a way that allowed for students to not focus on the pain and the hurt, but focus more on them imagining a Black future in which they don't have to live under white gaze, imagining a Black future where they can live in liberation, where they can achieve and be their authentic full selves. And so that was more, it was more centered on how can we provide a healing space.
Yeah, so core to our event space was a Black makerspace, sort of a central Black liberatory makerspace. And so the idea here was, how do we think about art as a historic method of Black creation, a historic method of Black joy? And so here at the Center of Racial Justice and Youth Engaged Research, I have the privilege of being the inaugural director of Arts, Culture, and Political Engagement. And so within our team, the Black Healing Joy and Justice Collective, art is essentially central to everything that we do, all of us understanding the importance and power of art making for sort of survival, right, and thriving in a context where your personhood is always in question. And so we knew that in order to create space for the Black students on campus who were just looking for somewhere to process, that art would be a crucial and essential method to just having people document their feelings, their desires, their fears, and possibilities in ways that they may not have been able to do in sort of just a larger campus or even in their classroom spaces. So we just see really art as a facilitator of joy and of futurity, I would say, and possibility. And so that is sort of how my role comes into play as a director of arts, culture, and political engagement, and why it was so timely at that moment. Because I think, we have social media, right? And there's often this idea to be responsive or reactive to sort of an anti-Black incident in ways that only would deplete, right, Black populations. And so we were like, this is an opportunity for us to turn inward, right, to the tools that already exist in the sort of boundless humanizing potential of Blackness and leverage those instead of leveraging resistance to these exterior structures that will kind of always be there. Yes, we published this article, and just to give context about academic publishing, so this event happened in October 2021, and we are now in the fall of 2023. So that just gives you an idea of the process of writing, and particularly when you're collaborating. And just to be clear, it was a beautiful experience, and there were 4 of us, myself, Gorana Gonzalez, who you see here, Imani Wallace, and then also Chanel Prince, who could not make it here today. And we sort of were so immersed in the work, in the art production, in conversations with students, in keeping our ears to campus and just figuring out what's going on, that when we started to write the piece, it was very actually sort of seamless and beautiful and so collaborative, because we have all spent so much time sitting with the art that was created by these graduate students and undergraduate students. And so we took several meetings just to kind of think about what is even the larger direction that we wanted to go in. Since we use art so much in our work, we knew that we wanted to sort of put forward a concept that we have specifically wrestled with. And so that concept is Black Artistic Imaginaries, which you will see us writing about much, much more. And so that was that. Once we knew sort of what that core concept was to our work, we sort of were able to then build out what is required of us in an article to sort of talk about Black art and liberation at U.S. universities. And so from there, we kind of split up various sections. Some people tackled the literature review, right? We all were keeping our thoughts together for data analysis and discussion. And that was that. From my perspective, it was great to sort of mentor 3 students, and to be very specific, 3 Black women graduate students sort of in this process. And I was very fortunate in my time to have dynamic mentors, Black and really of all races, who sort of set me down to sort of engage in the academic article. And I think that was sort of the highlight for me.
So I guess at the time, I was in my 2nd-ish year. Right now I'm in my 5th year. And so at the time, this was actually a new experience for me. My work, I'm based actually out of the psychology department. I work with young children specifically, and I'm interested in their thoughts about the world and how they're perceiving it. And so being on this project was actually a great opportunity for me to learn a new method. And so in the area that I'm in, methods like incorporating art aren't common, super rare. But I really appreciated this experience because it allowed me to see the different ways in which you can get information, more rich information, more kind of context, more understanding about what a person is feeling and thinking and experiencing through art. And when you're working with children, in my experience, it's really hard because you can't use the same methods that you would use with adults. And so for me, this was a really great learning experience about how to, one, put together this methodology, how to collect the information and data, how to discuss and analyze it later, and then to come together as a group and to talk about it, and then to understand what are the themes, what are we seeing. And it was really beautiful. I really enjoyed it. The students here at UMass, some of their art skills were amazing, and I was so impressed. And the way that, folks were really showing through their art how they felt, what Blackness meant to them, what freedom meant to them. it was amazing. And to have an opportunity to work with somebody like Dr. Coles on this project was also incredible. I mean, he's prolific in his field. And so for me, this was great to see how he writes. And I think he has beautiful writing. I love it to see people on how they write. And so it was great to see how he was writing, get some feedback on my own writing, and to use that to kind of actually build what I'm even doing now in my dissertation research work, which is actually out in the community in some aspects, working in community centers out here in Springfield. And so hoping to kind of take that experience and to continue to build with the BHJJ, with guidance from Dr. Coles, with my colleagues Imani and Chanel and Princess now, to really continue to push this work forward and finding new ways and different ways to really hear the voices of Black students and, for my case, Black children.
Yeah.
Dr. Coles is a brilliant scholar to work with. Him and I actually came into UMass in the same year, fall of 2021, and we formed and started working on the team together all at the same time in the fall of 2021. And I was a first-year graduate student at the time, and I think it was maybe 2 weeks into my first semester of my PhD program where this anti-Black letter was sent out. And so I am very new here, and I'm not a stranger to anti-Blackness, and I'm not a stranger to being a Black student at PWI or anything like that. And so when we first had our initial conversations around it, it was like, well, this happens, right? This happens across the board. And I understand this is shocking, and I understand that this is traumatic, and the undergraduate students, my heart goes out to them, because to be targeted in those ways, it's tiring, it's exhausting, there's fatigue, all sorts of things are emotions and experiences come along with this. And we were like, well, what do we have to do something, right? And so this is, by the time we had the October 5th event, this is, I've been at UMass for 5 weeks. And so in order to really mobilize in the ways in which we did, we definitely had to have the support system, the leadership, the vision, the mindset of the people that we were working with and working under Dr. Coles, and working within the Center of Racial Justice, and just the type of leadership that it took in order to mobilize that quickly and to mobilize that rationally, and just to be able to be concise and to get ourselves together in a way that we could put on a space for others while we were still going through this ourselves, right? Gorana, myself, Chanel, we're all Black students that go here, and so we were offended as well. And so we're going through these pain, these emotions of hurt and pain mentally, thinking this is where we're at, this is the space that we're in, while we're trying to create and put on for the community that we are engaged with. And so that was one of the things that I think was going through my mind at the time. And then just Dr. Coles has so much experience in publications and in the field, and just so much check the resume, he just has so many things that he does that he made it very welcoming for us to be able to understand these are the steps that we should take, and then when it comes to actually writing about it and deciphering the information that was needed, this is how we should talk about it, this is how we should discuss it, this is what goes into a research article. This was my very first experience with putting together any type of publication, and the ways in which we took the art that was created, some of it is hung up here in the CRJ, the ways that we had to look at the art and really decipher what it is that the students put together and how they talked about it at the event, and we were able to obviously talk directly with the students at the event as well. It was just so amazing to see. And then of course in the publication itself, you do see the pictures of the artwork laid out, and you see how students were depicting themselves in a space of liberation, in a space of authenticity, and it was very freeing. It was all very freeing and very beautiful. And I am an artist myself. I'm a spoken word poet, and I talk a lot about poetry and social justice as well in my work, and just knowing the power and the transformative properties of art, and the art, and how through the artistic and creative experience you are able to create, you are able to incite minds, you are able to discuss social change, you are able to critique power structures, you are able to affirm yourselves, you are able to gain a level level, a certain level of autonomy. You are able to, you know, just there's so many things that are wrapped up into like how art can be used in this space. And so I felt like it was just a process that I needed to go through in my first semester in order to understand like this is my path and this is kind of like the ways in which I can utilize these voices and this type of experience when it comes to utilizing art while we're talking about social justice and social change. I think that it was something that really helped me personally as a budding scholar and as like an emerging like, you know, writer for publications, and as someone who is like kind of going through my own research process and trying to figure out my own classwork and trying to figure out my own research questions and things of that nature. I think that it was something that really like gave me like a step up or a leg up in actually like moving in that path to kind of get to the point in which I am now, where I'm able to talk about these things and write about these things with more ease and agility. And it was because of that experience in my first semester.
One of the key points of this article, or why it was so meaningful, was that we were taking something that a lot of folks are, you know, have been theorizing and are currently theorizing, which is this concept of anti-Blackness, which is essentially how sort of Black people are sort of seen ideologically and structurally as inferior or less than other humans, and less than sort of non-Black folks. And so what happens with this theorizing is that it's often sort of kept right to those folks who are reading the books, who sort of are writing about it, who are engaged in their own sort of intellectual back and forth with each other, and it may be documented in articles that may be behind paywalls, or even in books, right, that are public but not necessarily accessible to sort of the folks on the ground who might be experiencing anti-Blackness daily at the hands of sort of police officers, vigilante citizens, at the hands of teachers, school leaders, healthcare officials, all sorts of places, right, where we experience anti-Blackness. So the biggest goal for me in publishing, and why it was important to bring these students on board, is to really think about what is public pedagogy. So how do you take an idea, how do you take research, and how do you actually make sure that the people who need it most actually get to sort of read about it and bear witness to it, and in a way, kind of co-author it with you. So this is us, right? There are 4 of us from the Black Healing, Joy, and Justice team on this article, but there are so many pieces of art from students here who were in real time experiencing the impacts of anti-Blackness, right? And it wasn't like the letter happened and the students they left campus. They stayed in the space that caused great harm. And so how do we think about giving scholarship essentially to the people, to ourselves, beyond sort of keeping it in our internal worlds, right, our internal heads, just to say, right, that we have this idea. And so that is really key for this article, and key to sort of why I publish extensively, and I think in different outlets, to try to make sure that it's not just me knowing knowledge for knowledge's sake, but really to be able to share that knowledge with others, right? So that we can all become better, more aware humans in this world. So this was a reflective and conceptual essay, and why we say it was a reflective essay first is because, as Imani mentioned earlier, a big part is like we are documenting anti-Blackness while we are Black ourselves, right? So it wasn't like we were doing this research distant from our own bodies. We were also taking a moment to stop and say, wait, okay, we are UMass affiliated people. How does this affect us? So, right, that was the first part of like the reflection. And then it is conceptual because we kind of took that, those ideas about who we were in this space, our minds and our bodies, how they're all affected. And then we thought about art. And then we thought about, okay, how do we conceptually communicate the idea, which was through this concept of Black artistic imaginaries. And so like everything in research processes and data collection, we had this wonderful concept, and then we had to think about how do we use that to sort of engage students and collect data. And many of us in our work sort of have a natural storytelling component built in, this sort of oral communication aspect, which is big in qualitative work, but also is very essential, I would say even before qualitative work got a name, into the Black oral tradition, right, of just speaking and being in community and sitting at the foot of others to hear their stories. And so we knew that immediately the method method would be talking, right? We would have to hear how people are thinking. And so one of the things that was core, we had like iPads present, we had tons of pens and paper and pencil, and so we just wanted to hear. And so we talked to students, which Imani and Gorana can talk a bit more about, but I think what I want us to sort of think about in this piece, and when we think about the methods, is using art as a method, right? Art as a facilitator of data, and art as a site of hearing, right? You don't necessarily always have to hear orally what people are saying, but visually as well.
Yeah, so while we were hosting the event, it was important for us to make sure that we were integrating ourselves into what was happening. So some of us sat down at tables and we were, trying to put things together ourselves. Some of us were talking to people at each table and trying to see like, okay, what it is that you're coming up with. And I think that, this was mentioned earlier, but there were multiple modalities of artistic expression for people to engage with. And so there were magazines and newspapers for collages. There were actual paints and paintbrushes, and there were markers, and there were electronic, and there was like an option to make a playlist, and there were so many different things. So even if someone said, because it's funny, I recently in a class we had a discussion around how like some people have like artistic anxiety, and like if they feel like they're not good at something, or if they were ever told that they weren't good at a particular type of art when they were growing up, that they would shy away from doing it throughout their lives. And so in this space, of course, number one, we made it extremely affirming, right? And they're in community with each other in their small groups, as well as just like in community about in light of what happened as a collective. But then also we gave different options. Like if you don't like to draw, it's okay. You can make a playlist, right? Or you can just write, And so those are the things that I think were, helpful. And then as I was talking to the different students and asking them what does this mean? I'm looking at a picture and I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean? Oh, well, this is a person, he's a Black person, he's smiling, there's a rainbow, there's, a pond, there's a sun, there's this, that, and third. And they're like taking us through the image and just like telling me about how this piece shows him, or a world in which he sees himself free. And I was just very taken aback by just everything that, the students have shared, because it was liberating in and of itself to know that in our minds, amidst this pain and amidst this harmful experience that we had felt over these past few weeks, that we were still able to believe and dream of this Afrofuturistic society that I believe is so important, right? When we talk about, or we think about the concept of freedom dreaming, and when we think about the concept of how our ancestors, right, had to believe that there was a future in which their, the lineage, their legacy would be free, right? And so I believe that, it's important for us as Black people and Black artists and Black scholars to think about the 7 generations before us and the 7 generations to come, right? And how, like, when we're using our minds and when we're using our dreams and when we're using our imaginations and we're utilizing the art that we can create and the words that we can share and the work that we can do in present day, how that is what is setting the groundwork for the people who will come after us. And so that is what I believe took place within those images and within that artwork and within those conversations that I've had with those students.
Formal kind of way, I was really grateful for the opportunity to just like meet the students. So like if I speak like not less as a researcher and more just like a Black graduate student at UMass, it was a great opportunity to connect and talk to more Black students because of, so in thinking about just the time and the context of this event is really important as well. When I started my graduate career, this was just before the pandemic, just before, everything hit the fan. And by the time I was in my second semester, everything was shut down. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to actually connect with any students, especially Black students, at least in my program and in my area. And so this event was, I think, very powerful in a lot of ways, not just for myself, but also just the students as well, to like meet and see that many Black graduate students in one space. And that was really wonderful, and it allowed us to connect across schools, because often in academia, we're siloed. You're like one in one. And so this was like, oh my gosh, there's more of us. And yes, we're all in these different programs and spaces, and now we're connected. And so to talk to students who are in geosciences, to talk to other students who were undergrads who I probably would not have had an opportunity to talk to as a graduate student, it was great to hear how they were thinking about this creative process, to talk to them and ask them, like, what do you need? Like, do you need this color? Do you need a pen? Do you need like another piece of paper? I got you. And then to also just like hear them talk about, you know, what this event meant to them too was also really nice, because it was probably one of the first events that we had coming back to campus in person after such a traumatic experience. So that's kind of what it felt like to me to talk to the students during this event.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And in the article we talk about COVID-19 and just like setting the stage for the type of environment that we were walking into. Like I had just gotten accepted to UMass. I got accepted to UMass in April of 2021, and at that time UMass was still entirely virtual, entirely online. And like later on that month, I found out that the board made the decision for people to come back to campus. So everyone, like there were sophomores that were there that like never stepped foot on campus. So there was so much orientation that had to happen in order for people to be like oriented to the space. And you know, there were like, I remember walking around campus asking where certain buildings were, like to undergrads and you know people that were there, and there would be like seniors that are like, I haven't been here in 2 years, I don't know, like look at the map, you know. So like there was so many people that we just have not been around each other. And the number one thing that grad students, particularly Black grad students, complain about is that the fact that we feel very isolated and that we don't really know each other well, because there's not many opportunities for us to connect, because grad school is already super isolating. And so add feeling super isolated on top of being a Black student at PWI that is in a space where there's like this anti-Black rhetoric happening, on top of like being away from campus for 2 years because of COVID-19 and so on and so forth. That is, you are in your own little world, right? People had, you know, there was so many, of course, you know, so much conversation around just how people couldn't even interact with each other as well as they did before, because the pandemic had changed so much. So I think like coming back into the campus space, and for that to be one of the main, you know, things that happened right after we got back, and then for that to be a huge event that brought Black students together, that made it a key and really essential experience that needed to happen in order for us to be able to begin to rekindle and begin to rebuild this energy and this community that we really longed for and that we really craved as Black students on this campus.
One of the biggest things that is important for us to communicate is that obviously all of this beautiful work that we got to engage in and that we got to talk about, it wasn't just us, right? But we are always in community, and there were so many people who are particularly supporting us through resources and other means that we would not have been able to sort of get this publication without. And the first is the Office of Equity and Inclusion here at UMass Amherst, who really have been supporting the CRJ since its founding, and BHJJ in particularly in this wake of sort of this anti-Black letter. We were given the space and resources to host all of these students. So we are just thankful for that. We are thankful for the larger campus and the provost office for working to investigate and sort of find what was happening with this letter, who was behind it. And we are very thankful for all of the students on campus, right? All of the Black students on UMass's campus, and all the students who support, right, what Black students might be going through and enduring on college campuses. And of course, we want to thank the CRJ folks and staff, particularly shout out to Dr. J and Dr. Green.